We're on the 51st out of the 73 factions. They are al-iskafiyah, the iskafis. They are the followers of Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Iskafi, the one who followed in the misguidance of the Qadariyah, Ja'far ibn Harb. Yani, Ja'far ibn Harb, who's he? If you remember from last time, there was a group of Mu'tazilah called what? The Ja'fariyah. The Ja'fariyah were the followers of two men, Ja'far ibn Mubashir and Ja'far ibn Harb. What's the norm of these deviant factions? Usually, they're all springing from the other. So this guy, Ja'far ibn Harb right here, he had a follower who built on his talk. A man named Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Iskafi. He followed Ja'far ibn Harb in the misguidance of the destiny deniers. And Ja'far ibn Harb was his teacher. And he added to what Ja'far said, this Ja'far ibn Harb. He said that Allah Ta'ala has the power to be unjust to the children. He has the power to wrong the children. And he has the power to be unjust or to wrong the insane people. But he does not have the power to be unjust to the sane pubescent people. Strange. That's blasphemy. And also amongst his fables is that he says that Allah Ta'ala, he said, Allah Ta'ala kallama abdahu, he spoke to his slave. But it's not valid that he would be a mutakallim, a speaker. So in English, what he's saying doesn't necessarily appear as it might appear in Arabic. So he says, Allah kallama al-abd. He spoke to the slave. So that would mean that Allah has a mukallim, a speaker. Kallama, who's the one who does the act of taklim? A mukallim, a speaker. So he says, Allah kallama, he spoke to his slave, but he's not mutakallim. Mutakallim. So he's validating that Allah would be a mukallim, but not a mutakallim. That's nonsense. Mukallim means someone who speaks to someone. Mutakallim means a speaker. And he validates mukallim, but he invalidates mutakallim. So why would he do that? Is he invalidating it because of its pattern? It has that ta in it, mutakallim. Is he saying that this pattern is inapplicable to Allah? So he's validly a mukallim, but not a mutakallim. He's validly a mukallim, but not a mutakallim. So is he preventing it because of the pattern that has the ta? If so, then he invalidates that Allah is Al-Mutakabbir, and that's one of his 99 names. It came in the Quran and in the Sunnah. So he can't be invalidating Mutakallim because it has that pattern with the ta. Because Allah is Al-Mutakabbir, it has the same pattern. So that pattern is not invalid. So he's just talking nonsense. Wallahu a'lam. The 52nd faction out of the 73 is a group called Thumamiyah, the thumamis. They are the followers of a man named Abu Ma'an Thumamah. His name is Thumamah. Thumamah, the son of Ashras and Numayri. And he was amongst the leaders of the Qadariyah at the time of Al-Ma'mun and Al-Mu'tasim and Al-Wafiq. And he added two heresies, amongst others, to the previous heresies of the Mu'tazilah. One of them is that he said all of the types of knowledge, the crafts and the fields, the talents, the abilities, these things are amongst the necessary knowledge, not something that you acquire. That's his claim. And he used to say that whoever doesn't know Allah by necessity, by necessity means without even thinking about it, without even needing any evidence, just knowing it in yourself. Like, what's something that you know by necessity? Like that you're hungry. When you feel hungry, there's a knowledge born in you, which is that you're hungry. You know it. And you don't need any evidence for that. It just happens to you. Or if someone were in the room with you, and you knew someone was in the room with you because you saw that one, or you heard that one, or you felt that one, for example. So now you know certainly that someone is there. You don't need any evidence for that. If you see someone in the room with you, you don't say, what's the evidence that I'm seeing someone in the room with me? Rather, you know it. That's called necessary knowledge. Also, you know by necessity that some of something is less than all of it. That's something known by necessity. That all of something is more than some of it. You don't need evidence for that. You know it by yourself, just necessarily. That's something born in you. So he says that this one, Thumamah, he says that all of the different types of knowledge and the different fields and the different crafts and talents and such are by necessity. That's not true. What's different from knowing something by necessity? What's different from knowing something by necessity if you actually know it, according to what knowledge means? If you actually know something but not by necessity, then you would know it by some evidence, by some inference. Even if it's the slightest amount of inference, even if it's the easiest thing in the world. Like, for example, what's correct is even knowing that God exists. Even knowing that God exists is not necessary. It's inferred. Because you need to just go through some process. And you just think for a second and then you say there must be a God. So that's not a necessary knowledge. That's an inferred knowledge or a deduced knowledge or an acquired knowledge. So these things that man is claiming are necessary, actually they're acquired. And he used to say that whoever does not know Allah Ta'ala by necessity, then he's not even accountable. And commands and prohibitions don't apply to him. And he was created to be subjugated. And he was created so to take lessons from him. To learn a lesson from that one. He's not created for being accountable and for being tested. That's what he claims. If he didn't know Allah necessarily, then he's basically like an animal. That's not true. And then from there he said, the atheists and the irreligious ones in the afterlife, they won't be in paradise and they won't be in hell. They will just turn to soil like the animals. Those ones who didn't know Allah, who didn't know God necessarily by the necessity of their intellects, like the laymen amongst the atheists, the laymen amongst the irreligious ones in the afterlife, since in this life they're like animals, then in the afterlife they will turn to soil like the animals. That's blasphemy. Kufr. He said even the babies, they turn to soil in the afterlife. That's kufr. You see, these Mu'tazilah are full of many types of blasphemy, not like the previous factions. They did have many types But these guys are just on a whole nother level of blasphemy. And also the second thing that he said, out of other things, was that the generated effect, whatever happened by a generated effect, has no doer, has no creator. Do you remember when we talked about the generated effect at tawallud? That's a case that the Mu'tazilah talked about. So they said that there's something called tawallud, which is like a domino effect or a snowball effect or a generated effect. So I'm repeating this now. Inshallah, if it comes up again and again, I won't keep repeating it. So that means you need to be studying that. The generated effect is like, or the domino effect. So according to them, they believe that they create their own deeds. So if there were a row of dominoes lined up, then according to them, if someone tipped over the first domino, he created that. Created the falling in that domino directly. But what about all the other dominoes that follow? According to them, he created all the other ones that fell afterwards by a generated effect. Tawallud. That's blasphemy. But this one, Thumamah, he said that the generated actions or the generated effect has no doer. No one created it. Kufr. That's kufr and that's atheism. And he used to say that the land of Islam was the land of shirk. Why did he say that? Because of how many people there were opposing him. Because of how few there were who agreed with him in what he believed. And he used to say that it's not permissible to take any women as spoils. And that whoever took a woman as a spoil or as booty of the battle or the war, and then he had intercourse with her, he's a fornicator for that, according to him. And any child born from that is a bastard child. That's what Thumamah claimed. And if that's the case, then that's him confessing that he's a bastard child because he was born from a woman who was taken as spoils. Now, saying that he was born to a slave woman is not, there's no dispraise in there. There's no dispraise in there. Ismail, the messenger of Allah, was born to a slave woman. So there's no dispraise in there. Also, Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, the son of Ali, he was a great scholar. He was born to a slave woman. And know that this innovator, this heretic, he used to show the innovation. He used to show bid'ah. Yani he used to show that he's affiliated with Islam, but not Sunni Islam. That's what he showed outwardly. So that's what he was showing, and what he really was just an atheist. But he was hiding his atheism by appearing to agree with the innovators. However, his atheism used to come out, and his irreligiousness used to come out little by little, from time to time. And that's what happens when someone has something in his heart. So watch for that. Be mindful for that. And pay attention to the signs when you see them. I remind myself. As it was mentioned about him, that one time Thumamah saw some people rushing to Jumu'ah out of fear of missing it. So he approached a slave that was with him. And he said, "Look at those donkeys. What did that Arab do to them?" He means the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So anyone who understands insinuations, he doesn't like the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam. And al-JaHiDH, who's a Mu'tazili, inshallah, we'll talk about him tonight. He had documented that Al-Ma'mun, the caliph, was riding one day and he saw Thumamah drunk and he had fallen in the mud. So Ma'mun said to him, "You are Thumamah?" He said, Wallah. Wallah. That's like a way of saying, Naam, yes. فَقَالَ لَهُ أَلَا تَسْتَحِي. Then he said to him, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" قَالَ لَا وَاللَّهِ. He said, "No, wallah." فَقَالَ عَلَيْكَ لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ. So the caliph said, "May the damn of Allah be upon you." فَقَالَ تَتْرَى ثُمَّ تَتْرَى. So Thumamah said, "Damn me some more, damn me some more. Do it again, do it again." Maybe it's like he's saying, "Yeah, bring it, come on. Do it again, come on," because he's drunk. And also, JaHiDhis had produced in one of his books about the instances of Thumamah's irreligiousness. That a ghulam of Thumamah, a ghulam could be a servant boy, a slave boy, or it could be other than that. That a ghulam of Thumamah said to him, "Get up and pray." So Thumamah, he just ignored him. فَتَغَافَلَ عَنْهُ. تَغَافَلَ, I'm translating it as he ignored him, because this pattern, تَفَاعَلَ, it has the meaning of showing something outwardly, just showing it though, not really being on that. تَظَاهَرَ, to show outwardly. Like tajahala, to feign ignorance, to be fake about not knowing. فَتَغَافَلَ عَنْهُ. So if it means like that, it means he's saying he acted like he didn't pay attention to him or catch him. Like imagine a guy who's watching TV and somebody comes and says to him, "Hey, come on, we gotta pray." So he just keeps like watching TV, acting like he didn't see it or something, or acting like he didn't hear him. فَتَغَافَلَ عَنْهُ. So he ignored him basically. فَقَالَ لَهُ ثَانِيًا. So then that one said to him, "Just get up and pray and get it over with." So he said, أَمَّا أَنَا فَقَدْ تَخَلَّصْتُ إِن تَرَكْتَنِي أَنْتَ. He said, "As for me, I will get it over with when you leave me alone." And from the intensity of his animosity for the people of the Sunnah, he instigated the Caliph al-Wathiq against a scholar named Ahmad ibn Nasr al-Marwazi, a Sunni scholar, al-Khuza'i, because he used to dispraise or criticize the Qadariyah. And another person named Ibn Zayyat, and a third person named Ibn Abi Du'ad agreed with him, and they helped him instigate al-Wathiq against this scholar. That caliph wound up killing that scholar. He beheaded him. It was said, Sheikh Abdul Rahman told us, this is the one that he was beheaded and his head was put on a pole, and they put a guard there at that pole so no one would come and take his head down. And at night the head would turn towards the Qibla and recite Yasin. And they would turn the head away from the Qibla and it would turn back and it would recite. So the caliph regretted killing him. He blamed them for their instigation. So Ibn Zayyat wanted to make him feel better. So he said, if killing him wasn't right, then may Allah kill me between water and fire. Then Ibn Abi Du'ad joined in. And he said, may Allah imprison me in my own skin if killing him wasn't right. And Thumamah said, may Allah unleash the swords upon me if killing him wasn't right. And then Allah answered their dua. So as for Ibn Zayyat, he went into the hammam. It's like a spa. Like a spa. It's steamy in there. So that means they have water and they have fire so that they can get the steam. And then Allah made the ground break beneath him, and he fell into the furnace. And he died between the fire and the water. And as for Ibn Abi Du'ad, he was struck with paralysis. So he was stuck in his skin until he died. He was stuck imprisoned in his skin until he died. And as for Thumamah, some of the tribe of Khuza'ah saw him in Mecca. And they said, hey, that's the guy that strove to kill our scholar Ahmad ibn Nasr. Let's get him. And then they surrounded him and they drew their swords on him and they killed him and they threw his corpse out of the haram and the animals ate his body. And that's what Allah willed for him in the dunya, and he shall get from the great misfortune of his heresies in the afterlife that which he deserves. Wallahu a'lam. Allah knows best. Then the 53rd faction out of the 73, so now we only have 20 factions left, is the JaHiDhiyah. The JaHiDhis, the followers of Amr ibn Bahr al-JaHidh. JaHidh means the one with bulging eyes. He enticed his companions and his fellows by his nice ability to author. He was quite fanciful with his words. And had they known his misguidances and what he innovated in religion of heresy, and had they known his ignorant statements, then they would have repented for praising him. And they would have withdrawn from affiliating themselves with someone like him. Amongst his ignorant sayings is that the slaves have no doing but will. They have no action or doing but willing only. They don't do anything more than that. That's blasphemy. According to that, then the slave never prayed, he never made hajj, he never stole, he never committed zina, etc. Whether the good deed or the bad deed. And among his heresies is that no one reaches puberty, according to him, except that he knows Allah. Anyone who reached puberty, he knows Allah. He has a right belief in Allah. And if that were true, that would mean that the people who deny the existence of Allah have a right belief in Allah. That's blasphemy. Wal-'iyadhu billahi ta'ala. How y'all doing? Everybody safe? Everybody okay? I'll repeat it, inshallah. Just let me know before I repeat that. Other than that, everything's clear, inshallah. When I go over this stuff from the Mu'tazilah, wallahi, I always feel in myself fear. I don't want to confuse anyone. Okay. So he said, amongst the heresies of... Okay, I'll slow down. Barakallahu fikum. So amongst the heresies of this man JaHiDh is that he says no one reaches puberty without being knowledgeable about Allah. Everyone reaches puberty having a right belief in Allah. That's his claim. That's not true. Had that been true, that everyone who reaches puberty has a right belief in Allah, then that would mean that those who deny the existence of Allah have a right belief in Allah. That's blasphemy. And among his ignorant sayings, something that's known about him is that he said, similar to something that we just mentioned, he said all of the skills, knowledges, yani crafts, talents, all of that is just natural. He said it's all natural. He means it's not by learning, it's not by acquiring, it's just natural. So he's saying it's necessary knowledge. That's not true. He says all of these skills and crafts and talents, this is just all natural, not by acquisition, but it's still an action, it's still a doing of the slave. It's a doing of the slave that he never chose. A doing of the slave that he never chose. That's blasphemy. He said, all of the talents and the skills and the crafts that people know, that's all natural, not by his actively, proactively acquiring that or little by little getting it through experience. Not like that. Rather, it's natural, like necessary knowledge. It's born in him. He says, and with that, it's still an act of the slave. It's an act of the slave that's not by the slave's choice. What does that mean? This is blasphemy, by the way. He's saying that it's like he's saying, for example, imagine if he were saying that the beating of your heart is your action. It's an action of yours, but it's not by your choice. It's not. The beating of your heart is not an action of yours because it's not by your choice. The shivering, when you can't control that, that's not an action of yours because it's not by your choice. And the blinking, when that blinking is not by a choice, that's not counted as an action of yours. He says, everyone who knew something, he knew it naturally, not by learning it and not by Allah creating it in him. So that's blasphemy. And then JaHiDhis, he went further than that. And he said, Allah Ta'ala does not put anyone in hell. Rather, the hell will pull its people towards itself. The hell will just pull them towards itself and they will go into hell, not by Allah putting them in there, not by Allah creating that, but that the hell will pull them and then detain them in itself forever and ever. That's blasphemy. Everything's clear? Would you ask me to repeat? Is it clear, insha'Allah ta'ala? And we said that this man, JaHiDhis, this Mu'tazili, that he was a talented writer. So he has known books. And as for his authoring, whoever knows what's in them, this is what the author Abu al-Muzaffar al-Isfarayini says. He says, as for his authoring, whoever knows what's in them and pondered on their meanings and the insinuations behind them, he would know that no one would busy himself with authoring such things except a person who has no manners and a person who has no virtue. The highest writing he has, like the pinnacle of his authoring that he's praised for, is called Tabi'ul Hayawan, like the natures of the living things. And he used this book to elaborate on his creed about all known things being natural, not by acquisition, which is a way to go to atheism. Abu al-Muzaffar says, and whatever is the case, this is what Abu al-Muzaffar says, he says he stole, yani, as if to say he plagiarized from the book of Aristotle and from the book of Al-Madaini that was authored about the benefits of the different types of animals. Abu al-Muzaffar says this man JaHiDhis in his book Tabi'ul Hayawan, he didn't produce anything from his own intelligence. And he didn't produce anything original except some verses of poetry that he put in there. But the Arabs had actually said those lines of poetry before, but he just reworded them so that they could be his own words. And he just stuffed his book with, and he beautified his book with these lines of poetry. And he put in this book such fables as the debate between the dog and the rooster, and the debate between the dog and the cat, and between the dog and the wolf, and what is like that. And anyone who's intelligent would not waste his time with the likes of that, and indeed busying oneself with those types of books is a sort of despicability. And amongst the books of this man JaHiDh is a book called Hiyalul Lusus, that means the tricks of the thieves. The tricks of the thieves. In that book, he talked about tricks and schemes, hustles, by which people could accomplish corruption. And he praised the thieves for their conniving. Yani shatara. Shatara, it means like being jerks, not being compatible, not being agreeable, even with one's own family. He's not agreeable. Rather, he makes trouble. And he's not, the one who has shatara, he's not innocent. He's not gullible. He's different from that. It's like he's savvy. He's conniving. Like those city dwellers who know how to trick people. JaHiDh praises those. And he praises them for their preferring boys over women. And he praises them for playing with dice and playing chess. Though playing chess is not haram. What's correct is that chess is not haram. But it's not virtuous to play lots of chess. And he encouraged those people to gamble. And he claimed that such behavior is virtuous. And such behavior is acceptable manners. And whoever counts prostitution and conniving and being a jerk as virtuous, and he beautifies that, and he encourages people to do that, then he has gone against the sacred law, and he has gone against virtue. Because the Muslims altogether agree that anyone who has such a lifestyle is dispraised. He is dispraised in the sacred law, and he lacks virtue. He lacks virtue. And amongst his books is what he authored in cheating businesses. And by that, he made corruption in some of the monies of the Muslims. And he encouraged people to scheme and to betray. And amongst his books is what he wrote in describing dogs and what he wrote in describing prostitutes or harlots. Al-Qihab, it could mean the prostitutes, it could mean the loose women. It comes from the qahbah, which is the cough. So those qihab, those are the women who they cleared their throat or they cough. And that's to draw attention to themselves. So they are the prostitutes or the loose women. And he wrote books in talking about the singers and the schemers, the hustlers. And nobody would brag about such books except someone who's like its author, having no manners and having no virtue. And on top of all these heresies, this man JaHiDh was ugly. One poet said about him, لو يمسخ الخنزير مسخا ثانيا ما كان إلا دون قبح الجاحظ شخص ينوب عن الجحيم بنفسه وهو القذى في كل طرف لاحظ. He said, had the pig been deformed another time, yani been made uglier than it already is, it would be still less than the ugliness of JaHiDh. He's a person so frightful to the eye that he could replace hell himself. He is the crust in every eye that falls upon him. Wallahu a'lam. Allah knows.